Snow fell softly on the mountain settlement of Timber Falls, turning the evening into a winter wonderland as the community gathered for the annual harvest dance. Lanterns hung from the rafters of the large barn, casting warm golden light across the wooden floor where couples swirled and laughed to the music of fiddles and guitars. Outside the barn, away from the warmth and celebration, stood Eleanor Whitmore. She was 23 years old, with blonde hair pulled back in a simple braid and a white dress she'd made herself. In her hands, she clutched a rough burlap sack, holding it up as if she might put it over her head. She'd brought it with her because she knew what would happen if she went inside without it. The stares, the whispers, the cruel laughter, the young men who'd make a show of dancing with every girl except her. The mothers who'd pull their sons away as if Eleanor's appearance was somehow contagious. Eleanor was, by the harsh standards of Timber Falls society, considered too heavy to be attractive. Too round in a world that prized delicate frames. Her face was pleasant enough, with kind blue eyes and a soft smile, but that didn't seem to matter when people focused on her figure instead. Too fat to dance. Too ugly to wed, she'd heard her aunt say just last week, thinking Eleanor was out of earshot. I don't know what we'll do with her. No man will have her. The words had cut deep, because Eleanor knew they reflected what most people in town believed. She'd watched her younger sister and cousins marry while she remained on the shelf, the spinster in the making. The one people pitied or mocked, depending on their temperament. She'd almost stayed home tonight, but something in her had rebelled against hiding away one more time. So she'd made herself a dress, fixed her hair, and walked to the dance. But at the last moment, courage had failed her, and she'd grabbed the burlap sack from the supply shed. If she wore it over her head, people might not know who she was. She could slip inside, stand in the shadows, maybe even sway to the music without becoming the target of ridicule. It was pathetic. She knew, cowardly, but it felt safer than facing the judgment head-on. You planning to wear that all evening? The voice startled her, deep and gently amused. Eleanor spun around to find a man standing behind her, snowflakes dusting his brown hair and the shoulders of his vest. He was tall and solidly built, probably in his late 20s, with kind eyes and a small smile playing at his lips. Eleanor recognized him. Harrison Blake, the newcomer who'd arrived in Timber Falls 3 months ago and bought the old Morrison Ranch. He kept mostly to himself, working hard to restore the property and build up his herd. She'd seen him in church and at the general store, always polite but distant, as if he was still figuring out where he fit in this community. I was just deciding, Eleanor said, her cheeks burning with embarrassment at being caught with the sack. Deciding whether to hide who you are so people might tolerate your presence? Harrison asked, and there was no mockery in his voice, only understanding. I've seen that strategy before. Never works out the way you hope. Easy for you to say, Eleanor replied, more sharply than she intended. You're not the one people mock. You'd be surprised, Harrison said quietly. He stepped closer, and Eleanor could see his face more clearly in the lantern light spilling from the barn. May I ask why you feel you need to hide? Eleanor laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Have you looked at me? I'm not exactly what people consider marriage material. Too heavy, too plain. If I go in there without covering my face, I'll spend the evening being the object of pity or ridicule. So instead, you'd rather spend it suffocating under burlap? Harrison asked. That seems like a high price to pay for other people's small-mindedness. It's better than the alternative, is it? Harrison reached out and gently took the sack from her hands. Eleanor was too surprised to resist. Because from where I'm standing, the alternative is going inside with your head held high and reminding everyone that you have just as much right to be there as anyone else. They'll laugh at me, Eleanor whispered. Some might, Harrison agreed. Small people often do, but their laughter says more about them than it does about you. He held up the burlap sack, examining it in the dim light. This thing is rough and scratchy. Probably smells like potatoes and dirt. You were going to put this over your head and pretend that was better than letting people see your face. Eleanor felt tears burning in her eyes. You don't understand what it's like. Maybe not exactly, Harrison said. But I understand something about being judged for things that don't matter. About people deciding who you are before they bother to know you. He tossed the sack aside into the snow. Then, to Eleanor's complete shock, he offered her his arm. "I came here tonight hoping to find someone interesting to dance with," he said. "Someone real, someone who understands that life isn't always easy. And here you are, standing in the snow, brave enough to show up even though you're afraid. That's the kind of person I want to know." Eleanor stared at him. "Are you making fun of me?" "Not even a little," Harrison said seriously. "I'm asking you to dance with me, Eleanor Whitmore. No sack, no hiding, just you and me and whatever music they're playing in there." "You know my name?" Eleanor said, surprised. "Of course I do," Harrison replied. "You're the woman who helped Mrs. Patterson with her groceries when she was struggling. The one who taught the Johnson children to read when their mother got sick. The one with the beautiful garden that everyone admires. I've been working up the courage to talk to you for weeks." Eleanor felt her world tilting. "But I'm not pretty. I'm not the kind of woman men notice." "You're wrong about that," Harrison said gently. "You're exactly the kind of woman I notice. The kind with kindness in her eyes and strength in her spirit. The kind who shows up even when it's hard." He still held his arm out, waiting. "So what do you say? Will you dance with me?" Eleanor looked at the barn, heard the music and laughter drifting out. Then she looked at Harrison, at the genuine warmth in his eyes, the patient way he waited for her answer. Something shifted inside her, a spark of defiance, of hope, of determination not to let fear and shame win any more. "Yes," she said, taking his arm. "I'll dance with you." They walked into the barn together, and Eleanor felt every eye turn toward them. The music continued, but conversation stopped. She could see the surprise on people's faces, the confusion, the beginning of that familiar mockery. But Harrison kept walking, steady and sure, guiding her onto the dance floor as if she were the most natural partner in the world. When he took her hand and placed his other hand on her waist, his touch was respectful and warm. "Just follow my lead," he said quietly, "and ignore everyone else." The fiddle player, after a moment of stunned silence, started a new song. A waltz, sweet and flowing. Harrison led Eleanor into the dance, and to her surprise, she found she could follow easily. He was a good dancer, patient and skilled, making her feel graceful despite her fears. As they moved across the floor, Eleanor became aware of other couples resuming their own dances. Some still stared, but Harrison's confidence seemed to create a protective bubble around them. He smiled at her, and Eleanor found herself smiling back. "See?" he said. "The world didn't end." "Not yet," Eleanor replied, but there was less fear in her voice now. "It won't," Harrison promised. "And even if people talk, what does it matter? They'll talk whether you hide or not. Might as well give them something worth talking about." They danced 3 songs together, and with each one, Eleanor felt a little more of her armor falling away. Harrison was easy to talk to, asking her about her garden, her family, her dreams. He listened to her answers with genuine interest, responding with his own stories about building up his ranch, his plans for the future, his hopes for finding a place to belong in Timber Falls. When they finally took a break to get some punch, Eleanor's Aunt Margaret approached them, her expression caught between disapproval and confusion. "Eleanor, I didn't expect to see you here tonight," she said, the unspoken addition being looking like that. "Mr. Blake invited me to dance," Eleanor said, straightening her shoulders. It seemed rude to refuse. "How kind of him," Margaret said, and there was something barbed in her tone. "Though I'm sure he'll want to dance with some of the other young ladies as well." "Actually," Harrison said smoothly, "I was hoping to convince Miss Whitmore to step outside with me for a moment. I'd like to continue our conversation in quieter surroundings." Margaret's eyes widened. Having a young man ask to speak privately with a young woman was practically a declaration of serious intent. "I'm not sure that's appropriate." "I'll be perfectly appropriate," Harrison assured her. "I simply want to know Miss Whitmore better, and it's difficult to have a real conversation over the music." He offered Eleanor his arm again, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. They walked outside into the snow, which was falling more heavily now, transforming the world into something quiet and magical. "Your aunt doesn't approve of me," Harrison observed. My aunt doesn't approve of much, Eleanor replied. Especially not me? Why not? Eleanor sighed. Because I'm not what she wanted. Not thin enough, not pretty enough, not married off like my sister and cousins. I'm an embarrassment to her, a reminder that not every girl turns out the way families hope. Harrison was quiet for a moment, watching the snow fall. Then he turned to face her fully. Eleanor, can I be very honest with you? I suppose, she said, bracing herself for whatever criticism was coming. I came to Timber Falls 3 months ago looking for a fresh start, Harrison said. I'd been married before, back in Pennsylvania. My wife was everything society said a woman should be. Beautiful, delicate, refined. Everyone told me how lucky I was. He paused, pain flickering across his face. But beauty and delicacy don't mean much when someone treats you with contempt. My wife made it clear she'd married me for my money and position, not for who I was. She spent her days criticizing me, belittling me, making me feel like I was never good enough. When she left me for a wealthier man, I felt more relief than heartbreak. Eleanor listened, surprised by his candor. I came west to start over, Harrison continued, to build something real on my own terms. And I promised myself that if I ever cared for someone again, it would be for the right reasons. Not for how they looked or what society thought of them, but for who they were inside. He took Eleanor's hands in his. Tonight I saw a woman standing in the snow holding a sack she was going to put over her head because she believed the lies people told about her worth. And I thought, there's someone who understands pain. Someone who's been beaten down but still shows up. Someone real. I'm not special, Eleanor protested. You're wrong, Harrison said firmly. You're kind to people who don't deserve it. You're brave enough to show up even when you're afraid. You have a good heart and a strong spirit. Those things matter infinitely more than the shape of your body or the arrangement of your features. Eleanor felt tears streaming down her cheeks. Why are you saying these things? Because they're true, Harrison said. And because I want you to know that when I removed that sack from your hands tonight, it wasn't charity or pity. It was hope. Hope that maybe I'd found someone worth knowing. Someone who might want to know me too. For who I am. Not what I have. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out a small box. Eleanor's breath caught. I know this is sudden, Harrison said. I know we've only just really met tonight. But I've been watching you for months, Eleanor. Seeing your kindness, your strength, your grace. And tonight confirmed what I've been feeling. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small pearl. I don't care what your aunt thinks or what this town says. I care what you think. I care who you are. And I'm asking if you might consider letting me court you properly, with the intention of marriage if we suit each other. Eleanor stared at the ring, at Harrison's earnest face, at this impossible moment that felt like a dream. I'm not beautiful, she said, needing him to understand. I'm not delicate or refined. I'm exactly what people see, too heavy, too plain. No, Harrison said gently. You're exactly what I see, strong, kind, real, and beautiful in ways that matter. I don't want delicate, Eleanor. I want genuine. I don't want refinement. I want honesty. And I don't want someone who fits society's narrow definition of beauty. I want someone whose beauty comes from who they are, not what they look like. He stepped closer. I removed that sack tonight not because I felt sorry for you, but because I wanted to see your face. Because I wanted you to stop hiding the person I've come to admire. So I'm not proposing despite who you are, Eleanor. I'm proposing because of who you are. Eleanor looked at this man who saw her, really saw her, for perhaps the first time in her life. A man who'd been hurt and had learned what truly mattered. A man offering her not just escape from judgment, but genuine appreciation. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll let you court me. Harrison's smile was brilliant. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then cupped her face gently in his hands. May I kiss you? He asked. Eleanor nodded, and he kissed her softly, sweetly, like she was precious. It was her first kiss, and it was everything she'd never dared dream it could be. When they returned to the dance, hand in hand with Eleanor wearing Harrison's ring, the whispers began in earnest. Eleanor could see shock, disbelief, even anger on some faces. Her aunt looked like she might faint, but Harrison kept her close, his pride in her obvious to everyone watching. And slowly, Eleanor found she cared less and less what people thought. She was seen, valued, chosen, not despite her appearance, but as the complete person she was. Their courtship lasted 6 months, long enough to ensure they were truly suited to each other. They discovered shared values, compatible temperaments, and genuine affection that deepened into love. Harrison treated Eleanor like she was precious, and Eleanor showed Harrison kindness and appreciation he'd never known in his first marriage. They were married in the spring in a simple ceremony. Some people in Timber Falls still whispered, still couldn't understand why Harrison had chosen Eleanor. But many more came to see what Harrison had seen from the beginning, that Eleanor was a woman of substance, strength, and genuine beauty. They built a good life together on Harrison's ranch. Eleanor's gardens became legendary, and she shared her produce generously with neighbors. Harrison prospered, and they became known as a couple who treated everyone with respect and kindness. They had 4 children, all of whom grew up learning that worth had nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with character. Eleanor taught them to be kind, and Harrison taught them to be just. The Blake children became known for their compassion and integrity. As years passed, Eleanor's body changed with motherhood and age, but Harrison's love never wavered. He'd tell anyone who asked that choosing Eleanor was the best decision he'd ever made. She was standing in the snow with a sack in her hands, he'd say, ready to hide herself away because the world told her she wasn't good enough. I knew right then she was exactly who I'd been looking for. Someone real, someone strong, someone genuine. Eleanor, for her part, never forgot that moment when Harrison had taken the sack from her hands and offered her his arm instead. The moment someone had seen past the surface to the person beneath. The moment she'd learned that true love doesn't demand perfection. It celebrates authenticity. On their 25th anniversary, Harrison gave Eleanor a wrapped gift. When she opened it, she laughed through tears. It was a piece of burlap, framed, with words embroidered on it in gold thread. She was too beautiful to hide. I kept it, Harrison explained. The sack you dropped in the snow that night, as a reminder of how close I came to never knowing you, how close you came to hiding your light under something rough and meaningless. I was so afraid, Eleanor remembered. I know, Harrison said, pulling her close. But you showed up anyway. That's what courage is, Eleanor. Not the absence of fear, but the choice to keep going despite it. Their story became part of Timber Falls history. The couple who'd defied expectations and built something beautiful out of genuine connection. Eleanor, who'd been told she was too fat to dance and too ugly to wed, became known as one of the most beloved women in the community. Harrison, who'd been hurt by superficial beauty, found lasting happiness with someone real. And whenever young people in Timber Falls struggled with feeling inadequate or unworthy, older residents would tell them about the night Harrison Blake removed a burlap sack from Eleanor Whitmore's hands and proposed courting instead. It became a reminder that true worth is inherent, not determined by society's cruel and narrow standards. That real love sees beyond the surface to the substance beneath, and that sometimes the greatest courage is simply showing up as yourself, even when the world tells you that's not good enough. Eleanor lived to be 78, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and a community that had learned to see what Harrison saw from the beginning. When she passed, peaceful in her sleep with Harrison holding her hand, her funeral filled the church to overflowing, and on her headstone, beneath her name and dates, Harrison had carved the words that captured the truth of their love. She removed the sack and found she was already beautiful. It was the truth. The only truth that ever really mattered. If this story reminded you that your worth is inherent and never determined by others' limited vision, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs this message today. Subscribe for more stories that celebrate seeing beyond the surface, that remind us beauty comes in infinite forms, and that true love recognizes substance over appearance. Leave a comment sharing your own story of finding someone who saw your worth, or about learning to value yourself when others couldn't. Together, we're building a community that believes everyone deserves to be seen, valued, and loved for who they truly are. Thank you for being here, and remember that you never need to hide your light. You are already enough.